Let's turn now to an elder statesman of the Labour Party. He's a bit fresh-faced as well, though. Alan Johnson, and he's leading the Labour In for Britain group. He's in Hull. Alan Johnson, welcome to the programme. Your side of the argument stresses the risks and the uncertainties of leaving the EU. Do you accept that there are risks and uncertainties in staying?
No, not in the sense that Michael Howard was suggesting. I think what Michael said was actually wrong. Michael said he could guarantee that we wouldn't be contributing to the European Union. He could guarantee that there wouldn't be free movement. Of course he can't, because if we take the Norway option, which many of the Leave side promote, then we would indeed be paying in. Norway's the 10th biggest contributor. They're not part of the EU. They obey all the EU rules. And they have free movement. And
but why would we have to follow what Norway does? Norway's a small economy. We're the second largest economy in Europe.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if there's our other options, the Swiss option, once again. So Michael can't guarantee that. The simple fact is, we are a strong economy. We are the 5th biggest economy in the country. We were the 4th, incidentally, when we were in government. But people say that on the Leave side, but they don't equate it at all with 41 years of membership of the EU. Well, part of that economic strength, I'm in Hull, where Siemens are making their biggest investment anywhere in the world. Billions of pounds, 1,000 jobs immediately.
Why wouldn't they do that if we left the EU? That they're there to build wind turbines for offshore Britain. Why wouldn't they be there?
It would have been Bremerhaven or it would have been Edgeburg. It was fierce competition. If you take us outside the European Union...
But they're building for Britain. They're building stuff for Britain. Why wouldn't they do it here?
Because if you take Britain outside the European Union, you have all kinds of uncertainties and all kinds of possible barriers. The Society of Motor Manufacturers point out that whilst their sales to China have declined, their sales to Russia have declined, their sales to Europe are up by 10%. That's because we pay no tariffs to export into Europe. So there's all of these arguments about the economy. But the other point I just wanted to mention, Andrew, is that Michael was part of a government that opted out of something called the social chapter, basic protection for workers. So in this huge market, biggest commercial market, bigger than China, bigger than America, there are protections for workers. Michael opted out of those, and I believe that him and many others think that that's good not to have those protections. Right. We opted back in. So for us, those protections for workers, to avoid this country becoming a kind of race to the bottom, anything goes kind of free market experiment, are very important.
Yeah, but hold on. Why couldn't a British government, why wouldn't a British government outside the EU replicate these rights if it was so minded? What would be to stop us from doing that if a government got the democratic will of the British people?
The first point is, as I've explained, a British government chose not to do that.
But that was an elected British government.
Was part of. The British government that we were part of opted into those arrangements. But there's nothing there's nothing to suggest in the history of the Conservative government that if we left the EU, that they would opt into all this.
No, but that would be a matter for the British people to choose whether they wanted that government. I mean, surely if we left the EU at the next election, Labour would promise 4 weeks paid leave, rights for part-time workers, paid maternity and paternity leave at the next election. And if that's what the British people want, they'll vote for you.
Yeah, but the people who want us to leave, the argument I'm making to you, Andrew, is the people who want us to leave consider all that to be red tape. They consider all of that to be bureaucracy. We believe that in that kind of market, that there has to be protection for consumers, for the environment, and for workers. And that's an important part of what Europe gives us.
But non-EU countries, Norway, Iceland, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, they all score very highly, even on the Trade Union Global Workers' Rights Index. Why wouldn't an independent UK, if voters were so minded to do so? And by the way, I don't see any mainstream politician saying that they would want to take away 4 weeks paid leave, but why wouldn't we choose to have that outside the EU? Why does it need Europe to do it?
It's a very good question. It's a very good question. In this country alone, it's a political consensus in countries like Norway and Sweden that there should be decent basic rights for workers. In this country, it's an election issue. UKIP were arguing in 2010
it be an
that they
election
should
issue?
remove maternity leave and paternity leave.
Is there a chance for you to win an election?
Yeah, but no. I believe if you're trading into this huge market and you've got all those opportunities to trade, then one aspect of that must be that you don't undercut each other on the basis of poor terms and conditions. I believe that's an essential part of being in Europe, and that's why it's an important part of our campaign to maintain those rights and protections.
Let me move on to immigration, because people are worried about the scale of immigration. Is there anything in David Cameron's settlement that will make a material difference to immigration from the EU?
Yes, there is actually, and it's very under-recognised, but the 2 points that were negotiated by Theresa May that were not kind of in the package that we saw in the Tusk exchange were very important. First of all, to tackle sham marriages, but secondly, to say that people coming into this country who we suspect may be engaged in the future in activities that we would find that would be criminal or perhaps terrorism, that we can stop them coming in. That's very important. At the moment, it's based on what we know about these people.
Well, sham marriages,
not what we predict
sham
could happen.
marriages refer largely to the subcontinent. It's very little to do with Europe, because if the
Andrew,
European citizens,
you asked
they
me
can
for
move.
two things that I thought would
Yeah, but I
improve
don't
it.
understand
think
what
they
difference it would make to the numbers. Net EU migration is now about 175,000 a year coming to this country. That will continue at that level if we stay in, won't it? There's nothing we can, we should be honest, there's nothing we can do about that. It may be a good thing, it may be a bad thing, but there's nothing we can do about net EU migration at that level.
No, absolutely. I've said it before. That wasn't my package, that was David Cameron's package. And I think it's important in terms of fairness and people making contributions before they take working tax credits, for instance. But I never thought that this was a draw for people to come to Europe. There are issues we can do that will stop exploitation, which I think is people's major worry. And we don't need the rest of Europe to do that. There's many things we can do alone. And I think David Cameron was absolutely right. You're right, Andrew, about free movement within the European Union. But people are also worried about movement coming in from outside the European Union. And outside the European Union ourselves, I think we'd be weaker, not just because we lose the protection of the Dublin Accord. We're outside Schengen, so you need a visa to come in. But because our most vulnerable point is Calais to Dover. And that incredible operation of our border force moving to Calais. The mayor of Calais comes over once every couple of months and says, take your border back, which ironically is
But that's
Nigel
a bilateral arrangement between France. That's a bilateral arrangement. That's between France and Britain. It's nothing to do with the European Union.
Here's the point. And I think the point that Michael missed as well. If we wrench ourselves away from the European Union after 41 years of membership, does anyone think there's going to be huge goodwill out there?
Well, here's another point. Mr. Johnson, about French politics. The French presidential right-wing campaigns, who may well win next year in France, are saying they're going to get rid of it even if we stay in the European Union.
Well, there you are. So
what's the point?
But
it's nothing to do with the EU.
They'll have a lot, but I mean, I don't think anyone doubts that if we wrenched ourselves away, it would seriously bring into jeopardy that arrangement. And that's, as I say, our most vulnerable entry point. We'd be worse off outside the European Union.
Jeremy Corbyn believes that we shouldn't look upon immigration as a problem. Do you agree with that in the context of this debate about Europe?
Only in the sense that it's not the driving force. People don't come here. They come here to work, by and large. They don't come here to claim benefits. So in that respect, I do. But I think, as Jeremy accepts, the exploitation that comes with that that we see needs to be addressed.
So just to be clear, the scale doesn't change. The scale of immigration, if we stay in the EU, does not change.
Oh, it might do. It might do. I'll tell you why it might do. I was Home Secretary before Theresa May. I was her predecessor. And the net migration figure was around 165,000. Very low. I'll tell you why, because we've just gone through the collapse of Lehman Brothers and the economy was doing badly. If we come out of the EU and we are in such a parlous state as far as our economy is concerned, that might stop people wanting to come here.
Right, okay. You said we've got the best lyrics, meaning your side, but we're still struggling to put them to a tune. Why can't you find the right tune?
Well, I think what I meant by that is, you know, for the Leave side, they've got these kind of simplistic, let's regain our borders, let's regain our sovereignty. And it's quite a complex argument to say, actually, you know, we have got the best of both worlds now. And yes, we do pull some sovereignty into Europe, but that gives us influence over 27 other member states and gives us it gives us a louder voice and a more powerful voice in the rest of the world.
It's not quite a tune, but we'll give you a time. You love your music, so we'll give you time to find a tune until we meet again. Alan Johnson, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.